Phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been disappointing to say the least. And yet another Marvel Disney Plus show has graced our screens with She-Hulk. The show begins pretty much how you'd expect, with an introduction to our main character Jen Walters, the cousin of Bruce Banner, and we learn how she becomes She-Hulk via a car accident with Bruce Banner's blood going into her. And from the off, the lack of quality writing really does stick out like a sore thumb. Like, they really could have delved into some quite emotional scenes here between these two cousins, with Jen having these new powers, and with Bruce, we've seen him throughout the MCU how he's had to battle with the power of the Hulk. And I understand that the show is going for a lightweight sitcom approach, but this could have been a great way to ground our main character. I mean, we did get a couple of scenes of Jen describing the struggles of being a woman, but with how it was just jammed down your throat as a viewer, it just didn't work at all, because like it felt like the writers were just preaching to you. Instead, it'd been a lot better if they could have actually woven that into the storyline, and then it would have had a much better impact, like if we got to this point maybe later on in the season after some time being built up. With all that being said though, I think Tatiana Maslany as Jen Walters and as She-Hulk, I think was a good casting choice. I just think with how she was handled was what let her down. In episode 2, Jen gets fired, but then in about 10 minutes later within the episode, she gets a new job with Holloway. And considering all the time they waste later on in the series, this could have been a great moment for them to take a pause and let the situation breathe for a bit. Something very clear is the CGI for She-Hulk is not very good at all, but it's been well established how little time the artists behind these things actually have to work on them, so I'm not going to have a big go at that, but it's not great. It does look like a PlayStation 2 cutscene a lot of the time. In episode 2, we do get the appearance of Emil Blonsky, aka Abomination, and Tim Roth is back as a character. And we do see the scene from Shang-Chi of Abomination and Wong in the Fight Club. And at this point I was intrigued to see where the story was going to go next, but at the same time I was also very cautious because I thought the show looked like it might be moving into one of those shows where it's just there to spawn off more shows or spawn off more scenes into movies we'll see later on down the line. Call me a boomer, but episode 3 did teach me one thing, and that was the existence of Megan Thee Stallion, as we have a whole trial surrounding a light elf impersonating her, as well as a scene in the credits with her and She-Hulk twerking. Wong is brought in for questioning about the whole Fight Club situation, and a group of thugs try to steal She-Hulk's blood, but she takes care of them. So with a third of the way through the season, it was becoming clear that each episode would have a contained story with an overarching plot progressing gradually alongside it. And when I say plot, I mean that in quite loose terms, and also when I say gradually, I mean that in like snail terms. Like for example, in episode 4 we have Wong against Donnie Blaze in court, while Jen goes on some dates and finds out that Titania is suing her for the use of the name She-Hulk. Also, hopefully if you did watch this episode you weren't watching The Sopranos at that time, because Madison does provide a few spoilers. Episode 5 follows on with the whole She-Hulk trademark issue with Titania, and the character Titania was just so bloody awful. She just came in whenever the plot needed to be there. She was played by Jameela Jamil, who was not so great of an actress, so I'm guessing that's why I went with that. One of the guys Jen dated in the previous episode, Todd, appears at her workplace, so he becomes mega sus. Jen gets a new suit from Luke Jacobson, who we also learn is the same tailor for Daredevil. Episode 6 is all about marriage, as we see Mr. Immortal dealing with a divorce case, and Jen goes to a wedding and gets with a guy called Josh. And the show is self-aware in itself, as we have Jen at the start of the episode say how marriages always come at the inconvenient time, just like this episode. But this and many instances in the past show that the writers think they're cleverer than they actually are, because yeah, it's all good you having this sort of attitude, but you've got to back it up, and they don't. Because these middle episodes especially, they really do feel like they're just sort of content for content's sake, just something to go on Disney Plus each week sort of thing, and there's not really that much passion and really effort behind them. So to the final 3 episodes, and with episode 7 we have Jen waiting for a text from Josh after having a night together. She has to go and meet with Emil Blonsky, and while there she can't get any service, and there's a load of wacky characters, and they end up all having a group therapy session together. And at the end of the episode we find out that Josh was only with She-Hulk for her blood, as he sends a message to Hulk King. In this episode there were a couple of interactions I did enjoy between the new characters, but overall it just felt like a deleted scene being stretched over into a 20-minute episode. The next episode however did include the arrival of Daredevil finally. The scene with Jen and Matt Murdock in the bar stood out to me because it seemed like the only time we get to see Jen have a settled conversation with someone, because a lot of the time she's speaking with her hyperactive friends or she's speaking with on-duty superheroes. Later in the episode, She-Hulk and Daredevil work together to thwart Leapfrog, and then they go back to the bedroom together and Daredevil becomes Beardevil. The episode isn't over though, as there's still a gala to attend for the Female Lawyer of the Year. As She-Hulk accepts her award up on stage, behind her on the screen Intelligentsia reveal all. She loses control and goes full Hulk mode, and that's the end of the episode. Now, it may not be saying too much, but this was my favourite episode from the whole series, but it could have come a lot sooner in the story. Like, this could have come around episode 4, for example, but instead, we had all those filler and all those time-wasting episodes. To the finale, and the intro pays homage to the 1970s Hulk show. Jen feels a result of what happened at the gala. She has a device on her leg, she loses her job, and she has to go live with her parents. And no prizes for guessing, as Todd is revealed as the villain, with Intelligentsia basically being a group of guys complaining about She-Hulk. I wonder how that feels. A lot of fighting and other crap happens, but none of it really matters as Jen breaks through the fourth wall once again, but this time through Disney+. She goes into the She-Hulk writing room and tells him how bad the finale is and calls out her own show. She goes to meet Kevin, who is in charge of Marvel Studios, who is an AI equivalent of Kevin Feige. Jen asks him a few questions like when are the X-Men coming and other things which will make fans' pants tingle. Then she sorts out her own show, goes back, has some lunch with Daredevil. We see that the Hulk's got a son now, and that's about it. Now, we didn't go into much depth of the episodes, instead I just sort of gave you the main points, and that's because, you know, a lot of the other stuff in there is going to be forgotten about in a couple of weeks. To paint a picture of how I feel about this show, imagine a badly made apple pie which gets the gym treatment and then gets served to you as apple crumble. Like, it's impressive how you made that pie into a crumble, but I'm not looking to consume that. Maybe this only makes sense in my head, but hopefully it makes sense to you as well. The show just feels like a waste of an opportunity. You have She-Hulk, you have the Hulk, you have Abomination, you have Daredevil, you have Wong, and yet this is the best you can do. Like, a waste of opportunity, but also a waste of time. And I think the show finds itself in that limbo between being aimed at an adult audience and also being aimed at an MCU audience. Because it had those Sex and the City vibes, it had those fourth wall breaks like in Deadpool, you know, we had Daredevil in this as well, so I think if they did actually let She-Hulk go loose with that rating, and as well with some better writers, this could have been an amazing show. But instead we get a lightweight show which thinks it's smarter than it is, and unfortunately this is probably one of the worst Marvel shows overall. So as you can clearly see, I was not a fan of She-Hulk at all, but let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're looking for something else to watch on screen right now, as I review for Miss Marvel, as well as a ranking video for Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared.